It's a rather startling thought, isn't it? We humans, creatures who evolved over millions of years to be constantly on the move, now spend the majority of our waking hours firmly planted in a chair. A recent study I came across revealed that the average office worker in the United Kingdom can spend up to 10 hours a day sitting down. When you add in the time we spend commuting in our cars, eating our meals, and then relaxing on the sofa in the evening, that number can easily climb to a staggering 13 or even 14 hours. It's a modern phenomenon, this culture of sitting, and it has crept up on us so quietly that we barely noticed it happening. Our bodies, however, have certainly noticed. I decided to run a little experiment on myself a while back to see just how much I was sitting. I strapped on a tracker and went about my normal day, which involves a fair bit of writing and research. The results were quite sobering. Even on a day when I felt relatively active, the data showed I had been sedentary for nearly 9 hours. This isn't just an issue for those of us with desk jobs. It affects everyone. From children in classrooms to retirees watching television, our lives have been systematically engineered to minimize physical effort and maximize comfort. This shift from a life of motion to a life of stillness is, I believe, one of the greatest unacknowledged health threats of our time. This profound change in our daily habits has happened in a remarkably short period, evolutionarily speaking. For millennia, our survival depended on our ability to walk, run, hunt, and gather. Our bodies are magnificent machines designed for precisely this sort of activity. Yet in just a few generations, we have traded fields and forests for office chairs and car seats. We have essentially put our bodies into a state of hibernation while we are still awake. The consequences of this dramatic lifestyle shift are only now beginning to be fully understood by the scientific community, and the picture that is emerging is deeply concerning for our long-term health and well-being. The problem is that sitting feels so harmless, so natural. It's what we do when we work, when we socialize, when we relax. It doesn't cause immediate pain or discomfort, so we don't perceive it as a threat. But the science is becoming irrefutable. This prolonged inactivity is a silent hazard, quietly chipping away at our health from the inside out. It's not just a lack of exercise. The act of sitting itself appears to be an independent risk factor for a host of chronic diseases. Understanding this is the first crucial step towards reclaiming our health and breaking free from the grip of the chair. It's time we started to see sitting for what it is, the new smoking. So, what exactly happens inside our bodies the moment we sit down? It's quite fascinating and rather alarming. As soon as your weight settles into a chair, the electrical activity in your leg muscles flatlines. It's as if they have been switched off. This immediate shutdown has a cascade of metabolic consequences. One of the most significant changes is a dramatic drop in the activity of an enzyme called lipoprotein lipase, or LPL. This enzyme is crucial. It acts like a little Pac-Man, gobbling up fats or lipids from your bloodstream and converting them into energy. When you stand or walk, your muscles release plenty of LPL to deal with the fats from your last meal. But when you sit, the production of this vital enzyme plummets by as much as 90%. This means those fats, which should be used for fuel, are left to circulate in your bloodstream. Where do they go? Well, they have to be stored somewhere. Some of them will contribute to the fatty plaques that can clog our arteries, a process known as atherosclerosis. The rest are whisked away to be stored in our fat cells, leading to weight gain, particularly around our middle. It's a remarkably efficient system for storing fat, all triggered by the simple act of taking a seat and staying there for a prolonged period of time. This metabolic slowdown happens almost instantly. Research has shown that after just 1 hour of sitting, the process of clearing fat from the bloodstream is significantly impaired. At the same time, your body's response to insulin, the hormone that helps regulate blood sugar, begins to falter. When you are active, your muscles readily soak up glucose from the blood to use as energy. But when you are sedentary, your cells become less responsive to insulin signals. This is the first step on the path towards a condition known as insulin resistance, a precursor to type 2 diabetes. The pancreas has to work harder, pumping out more and more insulin to try and get the job done. Think of your body as a high-performance engine. It's designed to run, to be in motion. When you sit for hours on end, you are essentially letting that engine idle. It's not turned off completely, but many of its most important functions are throttled down to a bare minimum. The fuel, fats and sugars, isn't being burned efficiently, so it starts to clog up the system. This state of metabolic hibernation is completely at odds with how our bodies are meant to operate. It's a biological mismatch between our ancient physiology and our modern chair-centric environment, and it sets the stage for a wide range of health problems to develop over time. Beyond the immediate metabolic changes, prolonged sitting wreaks havoc on the very structure of our bodies, our muscles, bones, and circulatory system. When we sit, especially if we slouch, we put enormous pressure on our spine. The soft discs between our vertebrae are compressed unevenly, which can lead to premature degeneration and chronic back pain. I know from personal experience that a long day spent writing can leave my lower back feeling stiff and sore. This is because the core muscles in our abdomen and back, which are designed to support our upright posture, become weak and deconditioned from lack of use. They simply forget their job. The problems extend down to our lower body. The large and powerful gluteal muscles in our buttocks, the glutes, are among the most important muscles for walking, climbing stairs, and maintaining stability. When we sit on them for hours, they effectively go to sleep. This condition is sometimes amusingly called gluteal amnesia. The muscles become weak and lose their ability to fire properly. To compensate, the body relies on other, less suitable muscles, like the hamstrings and lower back, to do the work. This imbalance can lead to a host of issues, from hip pain and tight hip flexors to knee problems, and an increased risk of injury when you do decide to be active. Our circulatory system also suffers immensely. When we are standing or moving, the muscles in our legs act as a second heart, contracting and squeezing the veins to help pump blood back up to the chest. This is called the muscle pump. When you sit for a long time, this pump is switched off. Blood flow to the legs becomes sluggish, and fluid can pool in the lower extremities. This is why you might notice your ankles swelling after a long flight or a day at the desk. In the short term, this is uncomfortable. In the long term, it can increase the risk of developing varicose veins and even dangerous blood clots, such as deep vein thrombosis. Furthermore, our bones need stress to stay strong. They respond to the impact and load of weight-bearing activities like walking, running, and even just standing. This process stimulates bone-forming cells called osteoblasts to build new bone tissue. When we are sedentary, we rob our skeleton of this essential stimulus. Over time, this can lead to a decrease in bone mineral density, making our bones more brittle and increasing the risk of osteoporosis and fractures later in life. It's a clear case of use it or lose it. By choosing the chair over our feet, we are inadvertently weakening the very framework that supports us. Let's delve a little deeper into the link between sitting and type 2 diabetes, as it's one of the most well-documented and dangerous consequences of a sedentary life. As I mentioned, when you sit, your muscles become far less sensitive to insulin. To understand why this is so critical, think of insulin as a key. Its job is to unlock the doors to your muscle cells, allowing glucose, sugar, from your bloodstream to enter and be used for energy. This keeps your blood sugar levels in a healthy, stable range. When you are active, your muscles are hungry for glucose, and the doors are wide open. However, when you spend hours in a chair, your muscles are inactive and don't need much fuel. The cell doors become sticky and resistant to the insulin key. In response, your pancreas, the organ that produces insulin, senses the high levels of sugar still circulating in the blood and panics. It churns out even more insulin in a desperate attempt to force those doors open. This condition is known as insulin resistance. For a while, the pancreas can keep up with the extra demand, but it can't maintain this frantic pace forever. It's like revving a car engine in the red zone for hours on end. Eventually, it will burn out. This is precisely what happens in the development of type 2 diabetes. After years of being overworked, the insulin-producing cells in the pancreas start to fail and die off. At this point, the body can no longer produce enough insulin to control blood sugar levels, and they remain chronically high. This is full-blown type 2 diabetes, a serious condition that can lead to devastating complications, including heart disease, stroke, kidney failure, nerve damage, and even blindness. The frightening part is how quickly this process can be triggered. Studies have shown that just 1 day of prolonged sitting can significantly reduce insulin sensitivity. The evidence linking sedentary behavior to diabetes risk is overwhelming. A large analysis of multiple studies found that for every 2 hours spent sitting and watching television per day, the risk of developing type 2 diabetes increased by a staggering 20%. This risk was independent of how much moderate to vigorous exercise the person did. It tells us something crucial. You cannot fully offset the damage of sitting all day with a 30-minute gym session. While exercise is brilliant and vital, breaking up long periods of sitting throughout the day is a separate and equally important part of the health equation for keeping your blood sugar under control. Our heart is a muscle, and like any muscle, it benefits from being worked. A sedentary lifestyle does the exact opposite, placing a slow, steady strain on the entire cardiovascular system. We have already seen how sitting causes a slowdown in the clearance of fats from the bloodstream. When levels of these fats, particularly triglycerides, and bad LDL cholesterol remain high, they contribute to the formation of fatty plaques inside the walls of our arteries. This process, atherosclerosis, is like rust building up inside a pipe. It narrows the arteries, makes them stiff, and restricts blood flow to vital organs, including the heart itself. This narrowing of the arteries forces the heart to work much harder to pump blood around the body. Over time, this can lead to high blood pressure or hypertension. Think of it like trying to force water through a constricted garden hose. You need to increase the pressure to get the same amount of flow. This constant high pressure damages the delicate lining of the blood vessels, accelerating the plaque-building process and creating a vicious cycle. Eventually, a piece of this plaque can break off and form a clot, blocking an artery completely. If this happens in an artery supplying the heart, it causes a heart attack. If it happens in an artery supplying the brain, it causes a stroke. The danger is not just theoretical. Large-scale population studies have drawn a direct and, honestly, frightening line between sitting time and heart disease. One landmark study that followed over 17,000 people for more than a decade found that those who sat for most of the day were 54% more likely to die of a heart attack than those who rarely sat. Astonishingly, this was true even for people who exercised regularly. This really reinforces the idea that sitting itself is a unique risk. The lack of muscle contraction, the poor blood flow, and the metabolic shutdown all conspire to create a perfect storm for cardiovascular disease, independent of our other activities. It's also important to remember the role of blood flow. The sluggish circulation in the legs caused by prolonged sitting not only raises the risk of blood clots, but also contributes to general inflammation in the body. Chronic low-grade inflammation is now recognized as a key driver of many diseases, including heart disease. The inflammatory markers in the blood are consistently higher in people who are highly sedentary. By simply standing up and moving around, we activate our muscles, improve our circulation, and help to dampen this inflammatory response, giving our heart and blood vessels a much-needed break from the constant, silent assault of inactivity. The most obvious consequence of sitting too much is, of course, weight gain. It's a simple matter of energy balance. When we sit, we burn a minuscule number of calories, barely more than when we are asleep. Compare this to standing, which burns about 50 extra calories per hour, or taking a gentle walk, which burns even more. Over a day, a week, a year, this deficit adds up significantly. Combined with the fact that sitting encourages fat storage by suppressing the LPL enzyme, it becomes a powerful recipe for an expanding waistline. The kind of fat we tend to accumulate, visceral fat deep within the abdomen, is particularly dangerous as it wraps around our organs and actively releases inflammatory substances. But the dangers extend beyond simply gaining weight. There is a growing and deeply unsettling body of evidence linking a sedentary lifestyle to an increased risk of several types of cancer. The connection might not seem obvious at first, but it goes back to the metabolic chaos that sitting creates. The high levels of insulin and related growth factors that circulate in the blood when we are insulin resistant can act like a fertilizer for certain types of cancer cells, encouraging them to grow and multiply. Chronic inflammation, another byproduct of inactivity, also creates an environment in the body that is more conducive to cancer development. The statistics are quite stark. A major review of 43 separate studies, covering over 4 million individuals, found that the most sedentary people had a 24% higher risk of developing colon cancer, a 32% higher risk of endometrial cancer, and a 21% higher risk of lung cancer compared to the least sedentary. The link to colon cancer is perhaps the easiest to understand. Slower gut motility from inactivity means that potential carcinogens in our waste products spend more time in contact with the lining of the colon. The link with other cancers is more complex, but likely involves those hormonal and inflammatory pathways. Beyond these life-threatening diseases, sitting contributes to a host of other debilitating conditions. It has been linked to poor mental health, with studies showing higher rates of anxiety and depression in more sedentary individuals. This may be due to reduced blood flow to the brain, a lack of mood-boosting endorphins from movement, or the social isolation that can accompany a screen-based, seated life. It can also cause painful conditions like neck strain from craning towards a screen and carpal tunnel syndrome in the wrists. Sitting, it turns out, is a full-body problem, affecting us from our bones and blood vessels right up to our brain. The good news in all of this is that the solution is wonderfully simple and accessible to everyone. It doesn't require an expensive gym membership or grueling workout routines. The primary goal is not necessarily to exercise more, but to sit less. The most powerful strategy is to simply break up your periods of sitting as frequently as possible. I am a huge advocate for what I call activity snacks. These are short 1 or 2 minute bursts of movement that you sprinkle throughout your day. The key is to interrupt the long, unbroken spells of sitting that do so much metabolic damage. A great rule to follow is the 30-minute rule. Set a timer on your phone, your watch, or your computer. Every time it goes off, stand up. You don't have to do anything strenuous. You could simply stand and stretch for a minute. You could walk to the kitchen to get a glass of water. You could do a few gentle squats or walk up and down a flight of stairs. The simple mechanical act of getting up off the chair, standing and moving your muscles is enough to kickstart your metabolism, reactivate that fat-burning LPL enzyme, and improve your insulin sensitivity. It's a small investment of time that pays huge dividends for your health. Another fantastic habit to cultivate is to find ways to incorporate movement into activities you already do while sitting. Whenever you take a phone call, make it a rule to stand up and walk around. Pacing while you talk is an incredibly easy way to accumulate steps and break up sedentary time without even thinking about it. Instead of sending an email to a colleague in the same building, take a 2-minute walk over to their desk to speak to them in person. When watching television in the evening, get up and walk around the room during every single commercial break. These small pockets of activity add up remarkably quickly. Finally, think about your commute and your errands. If you live close enough, could you walk or cycle to work, or at least part of the way? If you take public transport, try getting off one stop early and walking the rest of the distance. When you go to the supermarket, park your car at the far end of the car park instead of circling around looking for the closest spot. Always choose the stairs over the lift or escalator. These are not grand, life-altering changes. They are small, conscious choices that, when practiced consistently, fundamentally reshape your daily routine from one of stillness to one of gentle, constant motion. One of the most effective ways to sit less is to change the environment that encourages you to sit in the first place. If you work at a desk, the single best investment you can make in your long-term health is a height-adjustable or sit-stand desk. I use one myself, and it has been revolutionary. It allows you to switch effortlessly between sitting and standing throughout the day. I try to stand for at least 20 to 30 minutes every hour. It keeps my energy levels up, my back feels better, and I know I am doing my metabolism a huge favor. If a full sit-stand desk isn't an option, you can find cheaper converters that sit on top of your existing desk. You can also make simple changes to your home environment. Consider placing the television remote control on the other side of the room, forcing you to get up every time you want to change the channel. Keep your water bottle in the kitchen, not on your desk, so you have a built-in reason to get up and walk every time you need a drink. If you read a lot, try listening to audiobooks while you go for a walk or do chores around the house. Even something as simple as getting rid of some of your more comfortable sink-into chairs can make a difference, as you'll be less tempted to slump for hours on end. Rethink your meetings, both at work and socially. Does every work meeting need to happen in a boardroom? Sitting around a table? Propose a walking meeting. You'd be amazed at how productive you can be while strolling through a park or even just around the office block. The change of scenery and gentle exercise can often lead to more creative ideas and better conversations. When catching up with a friend, instead of defaulting to a coffee shop where you will sit for an hour, suggest meeting for a walk in a local park. You can still chat and enjoy your coffee from a flask while you move. Don't forget the power of active furniture. An exercise ball can be a good alternative to a traditional office chair for short periods, as it forces you to engage your core muscles to stay stable. Under-desk cycles or treadmills are another option for those who want to take it a step further, allowing you to move gently while you type or read. The goal is to create an environment where movement is the easy, default option, and sitting is a conscious, temporary choice for rest, rather than the standard state for all our waking hours. It's about designing a life that works with your body's need for motion, not against it. It can feel overwhelming to read about all the hidden dangers lurking in our everyday habits. The threat of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer is certainly frightening, but I want to end on a message of profound optimism and empowerment. The beauty of tackling the problem of sitting is that the solution is not extreme. It does not require pain, deprivation, or huge expense. The power to transform your health lies in the smallest of actions, repeated consistently. It begins with the simple decision to stand up right now just for a minute. That single act is a victory for your metabolism. Don't try to change everything at once. Start small. Pick just one strategy and focus on it for a week. Maybe it's standing up during every phone call, or perhaps it's getting up from your desk every 30 minutes. Once that becomes a habit, add another small change. The cumulative effect of these tiny adjustments is enormous. You are not just burning a few extra calories, you are fundamentally changing the way your body functions on a minute-by-minute basis. You are waking up your muscles, improving your blood flow, and keeping your metabolic machinery finely tuned and running efficiently. Remember, your body is incredibly resilient and responsive. It wants to be healthy. As soon as you start to reduce your sedentary time, it will respond with gratitude. You may notice you have more energy in the afternoons. You might find that the nagging stiffness in your back begins to fade. You could see your blood pressure or blood sugar levels begin to improve at your next checkup. These positive feedback loops will provide the motivation to keep going, to build more movement into your life, and to make these new, active habits a permanent part of who you are. So, the challenge I leave you with is this. See your day as a series of opportunities for movement. The space between emails, the commercial break, the phone call, these are not wasted moments. They are invitations to invest in your health. Our modern world may have designed sitting into our lives, but we have the power to design it back out. Every time you choose the stairs, every time you stand up to stretch, every time you go for a short walk, you are taking a powerful step away from disease and towards a longer, healthier, and more vibrant life. Your future